The city glimmered under a veil of golden lights, a restless pulse running through its streets as night descended. Expensive cars lined the entrance of the grand five-star hotel, their polished surfaces reflecting the glow of crystal chandeliers spilling light onto the red-carpeted driveway. Inside one of those cars sat a man whose face carried the quiet arrogance of someone accustomed to power. He was a successful businessman, known for his charm in the boardroom and his ruthlessness in negotiations. Tonight, however, he wasn't here for meetings or contracts. He was here for something far more dangerous, something wrapped in perfume, soft laughter, and a smile that was not his wife's. The car door opened, and he stepped out, straightening his tailored suit with the ease of habit. His mistress followed, her high heels clicking against the marble pavement as though announcing their presence to the world. She was young, strikingly beautiful, and carried herself with the confidence of someone who knew the weight she held over him. Her fingers brushed against his, and for a moment he allowed himself to feel that dangerous thrill, the rush of being with her in public, even if only in fleeting shadows. The hotel staff, trained to recognize wealth and status at a glance, greeted them with deference. The doorman bowed slightly, the concierge offered a practiced smile, and the manager stepped forward with a warm welcome. To everyone else, they appeared like any other couple, ready to indulge in the luxury of the city's most exclusive retreat. The businessman felt a spark of satisfaction. This was his world, where money could smooth over secrets, where appearances could be carefully crafted, and where no one would dare to question him. As they entered the grand lobby, the mistress's eyes widened in awe. She was not used to such magnificence on this scale, though she tried to hide her wonder. Golden chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, scattering light across marble floors so polished they reflected every step. Classical music played faintly in the background, adding to the atmosphere of opulence. She leaned closer to him, her perfume drifting upward, and whispered how beautiful everything was. He smiled, pleased not only with the surroundings but with himself. It felt intoxicating to be the one who could provide her this glimpse into another world, a world he controlled. They approached the front desk, where the receptionist quickly located their reservation. "Welcome, sir. The presidential suite has been prepared exactly as you requested." The words fed his pride. He had chosen the very best, not just for himself but to impress the woman at his side. This was more than an affair, it was a display of his dominance, of his ability to live two lives without consequence. He placed a hand lightly on his mistress's back as they waited for the elevator, his gaze fixed forward but his mind buzzing with reckless thoughts. When the elevator doors slid open, he guided her inside, the polished mirrors reflecting them back like a painting of sin wrapped in elegance. He saw himself standing tall, powerful, desired. He saw her beside him, the symbol of his indulgence. The world outside could never know, but here, within these walls of glass and gold, he was free to live as he pleased. As the elevator ascended, the mistress rested her head on his shoulder. She whispered promises of devotion, the kind of words he had once heard from his wife many years ago. The irony never touched him, in that moment, he only felt the rush of conquest. When the doors opened again, a hotel attendant led them down a corridor lined with golden sconces and thick carpets that muffled every footstep. The air was heavy with the scent of expensive polish and fresh flowers. At the end of the hallway, the doors to the presidential suite stood waiting. The businessman paused, allowing himself a brief moment to savor the anticipation. He imagined the night ahead, silk sheets, champagne bottles, the kind of intimacy that carried no obligations, no responsibilities. He slipped a key card into the slot, and with a soft beep, the door unlocked. Inside, the room revealed itself like a kingdom of indulgence. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city skyline, a view so breathtaking it seemed to stretch forever. Plush furniture, velvet curtains, and a marble fireplace filled the space with warmth and grandeur. His mistress gasped, her hand clutching his arm in delight. He felt taller, stronger, more invincible than ever. This was his empire, and tonight, it was his alone to rule. He led her further inside, closing the door behind them. The sounds of the city faded away, leaving only the quiet hum of luxury. He loosened his tie, poured champagne into crystal glasses, and handed one to her. As they toasted, his smile carried no trace of guilt. For him, this was not betrayal, it was indulgence, a reward for his success, a secret life hidden behind carefully constructed walls. He raised his glass to the glittering skyline, believing he had mastered everything. In his mind, the night was already perfect, and nothing could disrupt it. The suite seemed to breathe with extravagance, every corner whispering of wealth and power. Thick curtains framed the view of the glittering skyline, while the golden glow of chandeliers softened the room into a realm of warmth and seduction. The businessman loosened his tie and let himself sink into the luxury he had purchased. His mistress, still wide-eyed from the grandeur, glided across the room, her heels clicking on polished marble until she collapsed onto the velvet sofa. She looked like a painting against the lavish backdrop, her laughter spilling out as if the city itself bowed to her delight. He poured champagne into 2 crystal flutes, the bubbles rising like tiny stars, and carried one to her with an air of practiced charm. When she took it, her fingers lingered against his, and he felt that familiar fire flicker through him, the same thrill that had drawn him to her in the first place. To the world, he was a man of discipline and order, but here, behind these closed doors, he allowed himself to be reckless. He sat beside her, their glasses clinking softly, and together they drank to a night that promised indulgence without consequence. The mistress leaned into him, her perfume filling the air, a scent both sweet and dangerous. She whispered in his ear, calling him daring, powerful, the kind of man other men envied and women longed for. The words, though rehearsed, stroked his pride like silk. He chuckled, pulling her closer, pleased at how easy it was for her to feed his ego. He loved that she admired the life he had built, the wealth he displayed. It reminded him of his power, not just in the office or the boardroom, but here, in his personal pleasures. He reached into a leather bag he had brought and retrieved a velvet box. Her eyes widened as he opened it to reveal a necklace that sparkled like a river of diamonds. She gasped, pressing her hand to her lips as though she could not believe what she was seeing. He fastened it around her neck himself, his fingers grazing her skin, his voice low as he told her she deserved nothing less than the best. She threw her arms around him, and for a moment he closed his eyes, savoring the feeling of being worshipped. This was why he came here, not for love, not for connection, but for this intoxicating rush of being desired and adored. As the night deepened, room service arrived, delivering silver trays of gourmet dishes, lobster tails, truffle risotto, chocolate soufflés dusted with gold. The mistress giggled at the extravagance, taking small bites, letting him feed her as though she were royalty. He relished the game of it, playing the generous provider, the man who could make anything possible with the snap of his fingers. With every bite, every glass of champagne refilled, the walls of reality fell away, and he convinced himself that this was freedom. Between courses, he studied her face in the soft candlelight, how her eyes shone with awe, how her smile carried a hint of mischief. She was not his wife, who spoke of bills and responsibilities, who reminded him of the weight of their shared life. No, this woman belonged only to the moment. With her, he could escape the monotony of respectability. He could be reckless, indulgent, unfaithful, and feel alive because of it. They moved to the balcony, where the city stretched endlessly below. The air was cool, carrying the hum of traffic and the distant sound of music from the streets. He wrapped his arm around her waist, pulling her against him as they gazed down at the glittering world. She sighed, murmuring that he made her feel like she was part of something greater, something untouchable. He smiled, certain that no one could touch them here. To him, the night was flawless. Inside, the fire crackled in the marble hearth, casting shadows that danced along the walls. The suite seemed to embrace them, wrapping their secret in its silence. He led her to the plush armchairs by the fire, where they sank into whispered conversations, their laughter spilling into the night. With every word she spoke, she reaffirmed his illusion, that he was in control, that he could balance 2 worlds without either colliding. Hours slipped by, marked only by the refilling of glasses and the soft music playing in the background. The businessman felt the weight of the outside world vanish. Here, in this room, there were no deals, no family obligations, no suspicions. Only luxury, secrecy, and desire. He looked at her and thought to himself that this was exactly why he deserved everything he had. He had built an empire, and now he had built a secret paradise. He kissed her forehead, murmuring that she was safe with him, that this suite was theirs, untouchable by judgment or consequence. She smiled, curling into him, believing every word. And as they drifted deeper into their night of indulgence, neither of them could sense the storm waiting just beyond the gilded doors. For now, there was only the illusion of perfection, shimmering as brightly as the diamonds around her neck. The night had reached its sweetest rhythm. The businessman and his mistress lounged in the grandeur of the presidential suite, laughter mingling with the fading strains of music from the stereo. Empty champagne flutes glistened on the coffee table, surrounded by silver trays of half-eaten delicacies. The man leaned back in his chair, basking in the glow of the fire and the warmth of the woman at his side. For hours, he had felt invincible, wrapped in luxury and secrecy. Yet, as often happens in moments of indulgence, the world outside had not stopped moving. A soft knock at the door interrupted their playful banter. At first, he dismissed it, assuming it was another tray of fruit or perhaps fresh linens delivered too late. But the knock came again, more deliberate this time. His mistress glanced at him nervously, but he gave her a reassuring smile. Nothing could touch them here. He stood and crossed the room with the calm authority of a man who believed he owned every space he entered. When he opened the door, a sharply dressed hotel attendant bowed respectfully. "Sir," the attendant said, his tone smooth but urgent, "the new owner of the hotel has arrived this evening. She has expressed a wish to greet our distinguished guests personally. If it is convenient, she would like to welcome you in the main lobby." The businessman blinked in surprise. The new owner. He had heard rumors of a change in management, but it had never crossed his mind to care. Hotels changed hands all the time, and he was too important to be concerned with paperwork or ownership. Yet the request struck him as unusual. It was nearly midnight. What kind of owner chose such an hour to introduce themselves? His mistress sat up on the sofa, curiosity sparking in her eyes. "That sounds exciting," she whispered, smoothing the fabric of her dress. "You should go. It might make a good impression." He hesitated for a moment. A whisper of unease brushed against him, though he quickly dismissed it. After all, he was a businessman, accustomed to playing roles and shaking hands with strangers. Meeting the new owner could even be beneficial. Connections always mattered, and if the hotel was under fresh management, perhaps this encounter would serve him in ways he could not yet imagine. "Very well," he said, nodding to the attendant. "Tell her I will be down shortly." The attendant bowed again and left, leaving the door to click softly shut. The businessman returned to the suite, adjusting his cufflinks with a faint frown. "It's nothing," he assured his mistress, though his voice lacked its earlier ease. "Probably just a formality." She rose to her feet, her eyes bright with excitement. "Then let's go. I want to see the lobby again, it's so beautiful. And imagine meeting the new owner of a place like this." She slipped her arm through his, her eagerness cutting through his hesitation. He forced a smile, unwilling to dampen her enthusiasm, though part of him wished to stay hidden in the safety of the suite. Together they walked back through the corridor, the golden sconces casting long shadows as midnight deepened. The carpets muted their steps, and the silence felt heavier now, as though the hotel itself waited for something. His mistress chatted lightly beside him, speculating about who the owner might be. Perhaps a foreign investor, or a glamorous heiress, or an older tycoon who liked to keep his empire close. The businessman chuckled politely, though his mind wandered. Something about the timing gnawed at him. Why tonight? Why now, when he had chosen this place as the perfect sanctuary for his affair? The elevator doors opened, and they stepped inside. The mirrored walls reflected them from every angle, a couple wrapped in elegance and secrecy. He adjusted his tie again, his eyes flicking over his reflection. He still looked like the man he wanted to be, composed, confident, untouchable. But beneath that surface, a faint tension tightened his chest. The elevator's slow descent felt longer than usual, each floor like a warning bell. When the doors slid open onto the grand lobby, the businessman's unease sharpened. The space was transformed from when they had first arrived. The chandeliers blazed brighter, casting sharp light across the marble floor. The staff stood straighter, their movements precise, their eyes alert as if preparing for a ceremony. Guests mingled at the edges, curious but cautious, whispering about the mysterious new owner who had chosen this dramatic entrance. The mistress tightened her grip on his arm, her excitement contagious. "Look," she whispered, nodding toward the staircase. "She's coming." The businessman followed her gaze. At the top of the sweeping marble staircase, a figure appeared, poised with the elegance of someone who belonged to every room she entered. Her heels clicked softly as she descended, each step commanding attention. Conversations hushed, all eyes turning to the woman who now owned everything around them. The businessman's pulse quickened. He could not yet see her face clearly, but something about her presence stirred recognition deep inside him. He swallowed hard, telling himself it was impossible, that the unease he felt was only the weight of secrecy pressing against his chest. He straightened his shoulders, forcing composure into his stance. Beside him, his mistress leaned forward, fascinated, oblivious to the storm brewing in the man's heart. He told himself he was ready to meet anyone. But as the woman descended step by step, her silhouette growing sharper against the brilliance of the lobby, a dread he could not name began to coil through him. The world he had so carefully constructed was about to shift, and though he did not yet know it, the very walls of this five-star sanctuary were preparing to betray him. The lobby seemed to hold its breath as the woman descended the staircase, each step echoing across the marble floor like a drumbeat of fate. The businessman stood rooted to the spot, his mistress still clinging to his arm, unaware of the storm about to break. The chandeliers above shimmered with golden light, bathing the scene in brilliance, but to him, it felt as though every crystal was a spotlight aimed directly at his shame. When she reached the midpoint of the staircase, her face came fully into view, and the world around him collapsed. It was his wife. Not just the woman he had vowed to love and honor, not just the mother of his children, but the very embodiment of the life he had built, and thought he had kept separate from his secrets. She was radiant, commanding, every movement calculated to display confidence and power. A tailored black dress hugged her frame, her hair styled to perfection, her eyes sharp with the authority of someone who knew she owned the room. And she did own it, literally. This wasn't just a performance. She was the new proprietor of the very hotel he had chosen as his playground of betrayal. His mistress gasped softly, tugging at his arm. "She's stunning," she whispered in awe, still oblivious to the truth, her words cutting him like glass. He could not respond. His throat was dry, his tongue heavy. His mind screamed, but his body refused to move. The wife's eyes scanned the room as if addressing the gathered crowd, acknowledging nods and murmured congratulations from guests and staff alike. But then her gaze locked on him. A stillness, colder than winter, settled between them. In that instant, he knew she had seen everything, the mistress, the champagne glow in his eyes, the guilt he could not hide. It was as if the walls themselves had pulled back their curtains and exposed the ugliness behind his carefully painted life. She continued down the staircase with steady poise, her heels clicking in perfect rhythm, the sound growing louder in his ears until it drowned out every other noise. Each step was a declaration, each glance a challenge. She wasn't rushing, wasn't angry in appearance. She was deliberate, and that was worse. Her calmness told him she had been waiting for this moment, preparing for it, perhaps even orchestrating it. The mistress, sensing tension, shifted uncomfortably, her earlier excitement fading. "Do you know her?" she whispered. The question was like a blade twisting in his gut. He tried to form words, to craft an excuse, but none would come. His mouth opened, then closed again, his silence betraying him more than any confession could. Finally, his wife reached the bottom of the staircase. The staff parted for her as though she were royalty, and in a way, this hotel was her kingdom now. She approached slowly, her gaze never leaving his. When she stopped a few steps away, the air around them grew thick with unspoken truths. Guests nearby pretended to sip their drinks, but their eyes darted toward the scene, sensing the tension, hungering for the drama unfolding before them. "Welcome," she said at last, her voice smooth and commanding. She wasn't addressing the room anymore. She was speaking to him, and only him. The word cut through the silence like thunder, heavy with double meaning. "Welcome."